We're here, we're queer, and we love the Lord. That's right, you're listening to Coming Out Christian, a podcast about life at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith. This fun, faithful, and sometimes irreverent podcast is a production of Love Boldly, an Ohio-based nonprofit creating spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity. I'm one of your hosts, Siobhan Boyd-Nelson, and my co-host is the Reverend Dr. Ben Huelskamp, Executive Director of Love Boldly. So join us, and let's find out who's coming out today. Ben, it's you again.
How are you, Siobhan?
I'm doing great, Ben. How are you?
Doing all right, thank you. Very happy that this episode is coming out in July, when I hope there will be significantly more sunshine. And even though it is warm today in Ohio, it's like in the high 50s, low 60s, which is awesome for February. Still, I'm hoping for a lot of sun. And this episode is really cool, I think, because it's coming out the first Sunday in July, which means that we will have made it through Pride Month. And I'm not sure about queer communities in other parts of the country, but I know that the queer community in Central Ohio goes into essentially hibernation, if not like escape to other places around this time of year. I remember my first summer doing LGBTQ work professionally in Columbus was the summer of 22. And I remember I was around all my friends, all my connections, all my colleagues, all month of June. It was, hectic and everything else. And then July 1st, just as all the big corporations at that time were taking down their Pride stuff, it was like, wait, I don't see any of my friends anymore. And I didn't really see them again until like August 1st. And I just thought it was so weird. But this happens every year. So I hope we're in that kind of hibernation phase and, resting and recharging after what I hope and I plan is going to be a really, really full Pride Month.
Yeah, it's actually part of kind of the nonprofit culture here locally that nonprofits will close for the first week of June because it's July 4th. Folks were going to take off, for you're probably going to give a long weekend anyway. Folks were going to take holiday anyway. And you just asked your staff to work really hard for, 30 days straight. So yeah, you take off that first week in July. You take off more if you can. You rest, you restore. Because LGBTQIA+ fundraising season in Central Ohio is just a few short months away. There's never any rest for the wicked around here, right, Ben?
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. So if you could, I guess, get away, if you could say, all right, my dream rest and restoration post-Pride, what would that be? You're an introvert. So are you going somewhere by yourself? Are you going to a Pride festival somewhere else, which is what I love to do? I love going to Pride festivals around the world. Are you sitting in a cabin with a book? What are you doing?
Yeah, I think I would be going to one of two places. I would either be going to somewhere along the coast where I can see the ocean and I can just hang out and, do some writing, do some reading, drink lots of tea, maybe even fully disconnect from the world. Either that, or I would be going with family to Kelly's Island and Lake Erie here in Ohio, which has been our summer vacation spot for, probably 25 plus years now. We, go up, rent a cabin, rent a house, and stay there. And I would be doing pretty much the same thing, but with family, playing with the nephews, those sorts of things.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
So as your co-host here, I feel like I have to ask, what would you be doing? But I can almost put money on your answer.
You know what my answer is, Ben. What is my answer?
Something involving a cruise and probably the Caribbean.
Yeah, Well, it doesn't have to be the Caribbean. It is July, so that is Caribbean time if you're not in the Mediterranean or Alaska. July is prime Alaska season, and that would be really nice. And it's really beautiful, actually, being Alaska. And it's different. I think the juxtaposition of leaving the summer, the hot weather, which I never get tired of. You will never hear me say that, but going to Alaska, and it is cooler and you see snow and these icebergs, it's amazing. It would be fun. Well, another thing I cannot wait for is to have an amazing conversation with today's guest. I had the wonderful privilege of sitting on a panel with today's guest just at the beginning of this year, actually, just a few weeks before we're recording this, which was wonderful down in Cincinnati. He's amazing, and it's going to be an amazing episode. And that is because today's guest is Tyler Chernesky, who uses he, him, his pronouns. Tyler is a storyteller, writer, placemaker, and strategist who currently serves as the executive director of a neighborhood-focused nonprofit named Community Happens Here that focuses on connecting neighbors across difference and coordinates the Cohen Family Leaders and Light Institute. He served as a pastor at 2 growing churches, co-directed an art gallery, developed resources for Six-Word Memoirs, and regularly creates original works as a mixed media collage artist. He enjoys watching Ken Burns documentaries and sitting in the front row at Broadway musicals. Now, you sound like you can have a good time on your own, resting and restoring, Tyler. Tyler, thank you so much for being here and being our guest today.
It's great to be here. Yeah, it's true. As much as I love being out and about, and I'm sure I'm going to be exhausted at the end of June, you just give me a PBS subscription and I am content.
Yes, yes. Well, Tyler, before we jump in to collage art and Ken Burns documentaries and Broadway musicals, we got to ask you our first question we ask all of our guests. What is your testimony? What is your story at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith?
It's funny. I saw that question as always the opener in an email you sent, and I smiled because I spent many years in a particular type of Christian organization that I'm sure a lot of our listeners might be familiar with that had both a strong definition of what that might have meant to say testimony and certainly
Mm-hmm.
trained me in telling that story a certain way. Um, but now, from where I am, I think if I had to answer what is a real, story of what my life with God, life with faith has looked like, uh, it, it's both one of like survival and a lot of joy, if that makes
Mm,
sense. I
yeah.
feel like I have been through some very tough things, particularly uh, both because of and through my interaction with certain faith leaders. I spent a lot of time in a very non affirming world. I spoke in side B conferences for a while. I tried my best to fit in you give me a square hole, I'll try to fit in a square hole. You give me a round hole, I'll try to fit in a round hole. And when that ended dramatically, it was very painful,
Mm-hmm.
for obvious reasons. It was super disorienting, but there was a certain grace in having that happen earlier in life, in seeing really the lack of commitment to my personhood from those groups and
Mm,
realizing, okay, I've got some choices to make. But then on the flip side, so that's some of the survival. I survived some rough stuff. The
yeah.
flip side has been if I'm doing a testimony, I can't leave out the joy. It's like, man, even through all that crap, I today and now and most days, especially most days when the sun's shining, and it depends. We all have our good days and bad days, but most days it's like there's some real joy in terms of what faith means to me and finding a different church and a new church and pulling a bunch of my friends that I had brought to the church that I started to another place, a place
Mm-hmm.
that's healthier and where we can thrive. And a lot of those things, there's some real I guess, some joy on the other side of real difficult experience that I don't take for granted. I don't want to
Yeah.
make that a normative story. I've got dear friends that have been through some real crap themselves and have zero interest in coming back. And I get it. It actually makes perfect sense to me. There's
Yeah.
no zero judgment there. But it is cool when I think about my own life to be like, all right, went through some real junk in faith spaces, and am glad that somehow I have managed to leave both with faith and with joy. Like that's a miracle to me.
Yeah, it is. It's a miracle for so many of us that we get to have a similar testimony. Now, when you say you were able to leave, what do you think equipped you or resourced you to be able to leave that type of space and the spaces that were non-affirming of your personhood?
I think, well, in one sense, kind of getting kicked out starts a leaving process,
So,
which is
yeah,
true for
that
so many
helps.
of us, right? I see the knowing
Yeah.
nods on this video chat, right? So, in ways, sometimes it can be a great, I never want to, put like a shiny face on a crappy situation, but sometimes it is when I've had other friends find themselves in similar spots. It's like, not today, not tomorrow. 10 years from now, this may be a great gift.
Yes.
I don't want to take an ounce away from any of the pain right now. It is so disorienting. There's usually a lot of loss in community. There's a rebuilding, there's all the things that come with it. And yet the, I don't know, the forcefulness of how so many of us are ejected from those spaces can turn into a gift. But I think the
Right.
other thing that helped uh, when it's like, okay, how was I then Bambi getting back on my legs? Is I've realized, and I feel this way about so many, you know, queer siblings in faith, is like we really, because if we've spent time in non-affirming spaces, uh, while we were there, we had to think about what really resonates with us, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. So you're already listening through a filter. It's like, okay, I know they're going to say these things that feel real mean, but like, I'm really into these fruit of the spirit, or I really do like,
Yeah.
Jesus is pretty appealing. Matthew 25, I can get down with that. I could do all that to say, when the dust settles, of course, there's got to be, and there was for me, a period of just self care, and I played phone games. But when it settled, I started thinking, you know what? Like, I actually feel like I've been a pretty, quote, true believer all along. Like, I really
Hmm.
do believe in the dignity of all people. And I think I got that from Jesus. And I really do believe that love and forgiveness are super powerful. And I got that from Jesus. And I really do. And there was just, some good. And again, telling it in a story makes it sound way quicker than it was. But
Right.
it was this kind of aha moment over a period of time where it's like, all right, y'all are going to come for me, and without taking an inch away from your experience. But it's like, I'm seeing some things that don't quite click for me, but I know that there's, a parable about a mustard seed, and I think one has bloomed in my life. I know that there's some parables about, you know, finding, what is it, when you're forgiving harshly, like you've been forgiven much and you're forgiven harshly, and it's like, okay, I can be open, I can,
Hmm.
say that you've been trapped in a system, and maybe, maybe you're the father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing, I don't know, but I know that story and I read it, and I believe there's some truth in all of those for everyone, for me, however we choose to connect with it. So that, I think that was such a gift to come back around and really own the values and messages and themes, and that resonated with me through my whole religious upbringing, and then coming back to that as an adult and saying, like, don't tell me I'm not serious, don't tell me I don't belong here. It's like, I think I've oriented a lot of my life around you know some really key values that I learned in this setting. That was empowering. Like, that really helped kind of walk into a new space without, I don't know, without feeling like there's some chip on my shoulder, or I'm some second class thing, or it's like a Christian with an asterisk. It's like, no, 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 baby. Like, I got the real deal going on over here.
I really appreciate that. You are not a Christian with an asterisk. You
No.
have the real deal. And it sounds like you had you had an ability, even if it developed over time, to recognize the good and to take that and leave the rest. And really take and recognizing yourself, the ways that you were living a Christian life, meaning being a follower of Christ in your own life, without any reference to your sexual orientation or gender identity or anything else. You kind of really boiled it down to that nitty gritty. Wait, am I being a follower of Christ? Have I been a follower of Christ? And what is it that Christ requires of me, and not necessarily
Yeah.
this particular church?
Yeah. Well, and I think some of my, I did undergrad one of my undergrad degrees was in history, and I love history. And we've already
Hmm.
mentioned Ken Burns, my
Yes.
patrons. Ken Burns and Fred Rogers are my patron saints from PBS. And gosh, if you could combine the two of those, maybe that's close to how I'd like to age. But I think that like in history, and certainly this is true in church history or Christian history, loving it. There's some like incredible moments, like the Jesus movement in Rome said we
Hmm.
should actually give a crap about the people that are poor and destitute. And Rome says if you're not doing well, forget about you, and we'll just walk all over you and not feed you. And we know prison policy. We don't do anything for the prisoners. People have to bring stuff. We don't do anything for 1,000 categories in life that Rome could
Right.
care less about, and Christians say we will care about people. So there's some real beauty there. There's also some awful atrocities committed in the name of Christ, and crusades, and dehumanizing, and weaponizing scripture to justify, slavery. I mean, there's 1,000 bad things. All that to say, I think the historian's perspective of being able to name everything honestly and then claim some of the parts in history that are like I'd love to emulate that, and
Hmm.
also name the parts of history it's like let's not return there, was
Yes.
strangely helpful then in my personal life to be like, okay, I've done this in academic papers, I know how to talk about the mixed reality of really any group is like that, or any country has a mixed history, and but
Hmm.
it's just like, okay, here's the the glorious and the awful parts of the faith tradition I've grown up in, and is it possible in my own life to look at my own story and say, all right, here's the good parts, like I did learn some good stuff from quote youth group, even though
Yes.
there's also some
Yes.
bad stuff, and I can remember those parts, and I can think about the relationships that have been life-giving, and the the teachers and the principles that do mean something to me, and I can say these other parts, nah, no thank you,
Hmm.
I can let those go with grace, and say those are the things that you can name it as bad and not worth repeating, and to do both. I think just the historian's mindset really helps with that.
Yeah, it's an ability to hold a both and to kind of which life is, history is,
Yeah.
religion is a really big both and your ability to recognize it and name it without becoming completely disillusioned with the entire thing. And I think that that can be very difficult to name the atrocities, to name the negatives, both in the greater world and in our own lives, and still find value in it and still feel like that's something I want to have as part of my life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about your time as a pastor and what led you to being a pastor.
I wish What's true is there's a world still in which I could go back to being a pastor, because I still love Jesus and I still really love people. And I
Okay.
wish more pastors would say that when they answer why they became one, which is not a backhand, whatever, anything to people I've worked with or that I know from that world. But it really is funny. Like, to me, I think what I both loved about being a pastor and what made me, if I dare say it, a good pastor is like, I just do love people. They're so
Yeah.
stinking interesting. They're all so different. Like, we all are both entirely different and not that different, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So there's parts where it's like everyone is 10,000% unique and has had their own experience. And I don't know, at the end of the day, like, folks just kind of want to belong and they want some people to support them. And so to
Yes.
be listen, I think one of the parts that was such a privilege as a pastor is people really do um, share, difficult and joyous parts of their life with you, and to both
Hmm.
honor that trust and to really support in the ways that they need at whatever moment they're in. Like, that was a gift. I loved, loved, loved that part of the job. Um, and I feel like that still happens to me now in other nonprofit spaces, but there is a part where I'm like, dang it, that is true as can be about me, that I'm fascinated by people. And then I do love Jesus, not all the Jesuses we've built since then, but again, someone who is uh, introducing other ways of living and being to people who are in an oppressive system that he's compelling
Mm.
and has been compelling to a lot of other people. You think about global justice movements whether they, quote, worship Jesus or not, people have been inspired by him. It's like, he's infinitely fascinating to me still. I'm just like,
Yeah.
Jesus is fascinating. So those things together equaled pastor. And I'd say I loved the people. And then it was fun on Sunday too. I think making services a little creative played to the old theater kid in me. So maybe we bring in that Broadway thread. There was a little bit about maybe adult learning says we don't have to just talk at someone for 40 minutes, but can we get a little creative in how adults actually learn or try some other fun stuff like that? Made it a perfect mix that was made it so attractive to me. And I guess I'd say I never left because that interest died. I left
Okay.
because some other people had some other opinions, but it's like in terms of that matrix of wiring and passion, it's like, oh yeah, I could do it again if the right opportunity was there, and I think I'd be pretty good at it between the three of us. There's part of me that's like, I think I still got that or still care in the same ways, but just haven't found the right spot for that.
I would say, Tyler, that you always have a smile for everyone in the room. Like that is absolutely true. So, and I don't know that that is a pastor qualification or has been a pastor qualification in the past, but I think it's a good one. I'd put it on the table as a
It should
consideration.
be.
It should be, yeah. You are definitely approachable, and but beyond approachable, you are someone who has a light, and you kind of wear your love for your fellow man on your sleeve. It's very easy to tell that you're a person that is interested in others, really excited to meet other people, and then other people don't have to be self-conscious around you. And I think that's a great. Those are some great characteristics for a pastor.
Thank you. Well, and in my seminary, I appreciate you saying that. They would always quote, there's like a famous old quote that pastors love to say to each other and thing where it's like, you need to read the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. The big idea being like you're rooted in some kind of faith tradition, but you're also aware of what's going on culturally. And it's like
Right.
without debating, I don't know, even the person that said that, I purposely withheld their name, and all the other pieces we could say about that quote. What I find so fascinating and where I really appreciate your compliment about the smile and disposition in the world. But like when I read the newspaper with one hand and when I have the Jesus that I know in the other hand,
Hmm.
it's like there have been apathetic ages where people have just grown numb to their neighbors and other stuff. And it's like, and that could be where we are now. Someone can make the case. I don't feel that. I think people are so lonely. I think people are so sad. And that's when you get people to sit down at coffee, that comes out, and overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
so if my presence can be one that reminds folks that there's joy and that there's interest, it's a great thing. But you talk now, maybe I will talk some crap about other pastors. It's nuts to me when people, quote, have the newspaper in one hand and think that, what the world needs now is some more like intensity and pointing out all the issues. And it's like, I think people, and push back if I'm wrong, but it's like, I actually think people are pretty aware there's a lot of issues and have a decent grasp, at least a passing grade grasp on what some of
Hmm.
those issues can be. It's
Right.
like, I think any kind of imagination or hope or remembering that it is what a gift to be alive. Like if there's anything I could say about God, it's like that God would somehow decide to give people existence and human existence. I mean, Fred Rogers said when he got his Lifetime Achievement Award, he's like, being a human is the greatest gift of this or any millennium. Life isn't
Mm.
cheap. And it's like, I
Yeah.
feel that. What a gift.
Yeah.
And to remind people of that in this cultural moment, if that's smiles and joy and hugs. I'm just like, I don't understand anyone when you were saying, Ben, maybe it should be a requirement. I don't understand people with a different disposition right now. And there have been ages where we need different dispositions. But right now, everybody I know needs a hug. Everybody I know needs a nap. And everybody I know needs a visceral reminder, we're not stuck. It won't always be this way. And it still is a beautiful thing to be alive. Like it is not, we are not just trapped in some race, some
Yeah.
rat race. So
Yeah,
yeah.
because if you just read the newspaper, you'll get all of the doom and gloom and bad news that you need. I mean, just not even the newspaper. I mean, if you read anything, if you read
Yeah.
Reddit, if you read social media, if you read the newspaper, if you watch YouTube, and what an idea that on Sunday at some point you could go to a space where you know that you are going to hear a message of hope and light, and get some resources, or just get another quiver of light for your toolkit to get you through the rest of the week. I think that when people talk about folks aren't going to church, it's because, well, what are you getting at church that you aren't getting everywhere else? Right? You can
Yeah.
get doom and gloom everywhere else.
Yeah.
I think light is what we need more of, and what is very rare. And the church could really provide that if it wanted to.
Yeah. And I think too, maybe it's having done some work in different communities connected with addiction or other pieces,
Mm-hmm.
but the tradition I grew up in seemed to think that people needed it made plain to them what's quote wrong or what they need to work on. So there's a lot of talk about building conviction. It's like, I don't know, the more I've been around people, folks have a pretty good sense of what isn't working for them. And of course, there's always more to learn. And sometimes you do
Yes.
have to educate and be like, actually, what you're doing isn't working for others. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
there's never a time to have a quote prophetic voice or call out, but it's like by and large, people know. I mean,
Yeah.
again, in my addiction circles, it's like, look, I know my drinking's a problem. I know like they come in with that.
Yeah.
And the question is, using that as both an illustration, but knowing it's real, it's like the question is like, so is it possible to ever quit this? Like, am I ever going to have a life post XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that that has shaped so much of my world. I do. And just trusting how God made us to have wisdom and self-awareness. It doesn't mean we always act in accordance of it. And I can ignore all the signals my body and spirit are sending me to. So it's not saying we're just all, immediately able to solve whatever faces us. But it is to say, in my experience, folks are pretty aware at what's not working for them. They're pretty aware of what they might like to try differently, or a relationship they might try to mend, or I know it's
Mm-hmm.
not good that I don't talk to X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. They know that coming in.
Yeah.
What they don't know is, and what they need encouragement in is like, it can be different. You
Right.
can take some steps. You can find support. Like that's the question mark. But the question mark isn't like, oh, again, probably what I heard in more conservative spaces, you need to really make the case that this is wrong. It's like, I don't know. People have a pretty good sense, I think. There's something
Well,
about, yeah, anyway, I'll stop
well,
there. I
right.
could
Well,
rant
and
about that for forever.
yeah, and if you're doing something that's really harmful in your life, it usually has a way of showing itself in your life. You don't
Yeah.
really necessarily need someone in a pulpit to point that out for you. I think that's even, I can't think of the Bible verse off my top of my head, but I think that's what we're even taught in scripture, is that, like, the wages of sin is death, meaning sin's not going to get you anywhere good, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's going to like weigh on your health, weigh on your physical health, your mental health in some way. So the need for someone else to tell you about it and why it's not good for you, or the fact that it's bad, it's like, well, I didn't really know it wasn't bad. I
Yes.
needed to know that there was something different. I needed to know there was an alternative, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Always. Always. And again, talk about reclaiming faith. It's one too where I spent sometimes in some charismatic worlds, and I've said this to pastors when they meet. They're like, "You're just, it's light, or you don't want to offend people." And I said, perhaps, maybe that's part of it, or maybe I actually believe the parts that say God's Spirit will tell people what they need to work on next. Maybe your like theology of the Spirit isn't quite there. So I could be timid. I could be one of those, preaching to itching ears. Maybe let's entertain
Mm-hmm.
that, that you need to at least entertain equally, dear friend, on the other side, then maybe you don't trust how God's Spirit's working individually in everyone. And I actually just think that maybe people could gather in this room and God's Spirit will tell everybody what they need to do next. And they just need a little encouragement to do it. So we'll see what turns out. But but that's some of that confidence that comes from, knowing both stories and not letting an asterisk being put on it. It's like, no, I might
Yes.
actually really believe. Like, you're saying my faith is weak, and I'm coming back and telling you, I don't know, there could be a world where God's Spirit actually is strong enough to tell everybody in this room individually the next step for them. So let's see, let's
Imagine
just see
that.
what happens.
Imagine
Yeah.
that. Imagine that. And I cannot stop thinking about that. I am not Christian with an asterisk. We have to ask Tyler if we can use that. I just think that that's such a great way. And it's a bold way. And of course, our organization is called Love Boldly. It's a very bold way to proclaim one's faith, which is something that's difficult for queer folks to do. Right. And in every space, it's why this podcast is called Coming Out Christian, because it's hard to boldly proclaim one's faith as a queer person in so many spaces, not just churches, not just queer spaces, but in the world writ large, because the world has bought into this idea that queer means anti-God and God is anti-queer for some reason. So I love it. I got to get a big old Asterisk t-shirt.
Yep. Yep. I'm with you. I'm with you. Well, and even when you're speaking there, it made me think too. It's like I've both had to gain some confidence in quote faith spaces I've been, but then even queer spaces that I'm in, having
Yeah.
so much sensitivity to the varied stories there. I mean, I want to say, gosh, there's too many books on my shelf, but what was it? And help me, Ben, because you read all the books too. You probably know Siobhan. It's an Andrew Marin. Is it The Story of Us or This Is Us? But basically the idea that
Yeah.
so many queer people have had experience in the church growing up. I can't think of the book title. I find that everywhere in Cincinnati. I play gay intramurals. I'm out there at different places. You're all around in the city. And there it's I want to say maybe a different kind of boldness. But it's a boldness to be, I don't know, to claim that it's like this category of faith is still meaningful to me, even
Mm-hmm.
knowing all the hurt, and there's zero pressure for you, my dear friend, but also like the stuff you say you really like about me, like the kindness and the fun, and it's encouraging, and your friends don't really like chat a bunch about each other, but your friends are always pumping each other up. I hear that all the time in gay community. They're like, your kickball team cheers the loudest for each other and for others. Your this does this, and to have just that little, gulp of boldness, it's like, well, it could be because we all survived church and took the best parts, and
Oh,
that's with,
wow.
and
Okay.
then, and
Yeah.
that's with zero call to action for you, friend. You know what I mean? But just you
Mm-hmm.
saying the boldness in both spaces, because that doesn't click in those outside church spaces. People are like, what? You don't mean it didn't tear you all up? It's like, no, it tore us all up, but we've kept the best parts. And honestly, if we were brutally honest, the reason we're, so fun to play in queer kickball is probably because we survived this thing called church and came out on the other side with the best parts. And that's why we're so fun, and not doing that in some cheesy evangelistic way, but just saying like the boldness, I guess, looks different in both spaces. Like you were saying, there's times to be real bold in faith spaces, but also times to be like, this could be worth, sharing in this community. Or when people do ask, like, how
Yeah.
are you all so nice? It's like, well, we all met in a church, right? That church didn't work out, but maybe we worked out,
Well, and I think it's just, church people are supposed to be nice. Like we all met in a church, and you do
Yeah.
know that church people are supposed to be the nicest people you know. Maybe you didn't know that, and that is we could go on and on about that. But the kind of, I think, especially in queer spaces, queer people of faith have a really neat opportunity, like you're saying with your kickball team, of being such an amazing witness, right? I mean, just think
Yeah.
about that amazing witness that you are being in that queer space, where so often when queer people think church people, they are thinking yelling Westboro Baptist,
Right.
I hate you and I want you to go to hell and I'm telling you that God hates you type of people. Whereas you're, church folk, for lack of a better term, and you're over there giggling and laughing and having a great time and just so much fun to hang out with. It's like, whoa, that is such a radical witness in that space. And it's
Yeah.
such a good one.
Well, and it's funny, like at the post game happy hours, but I like to think I'm still on the clock. It's a Sunday. No, I'm joking. But, we play kickball on a Sunday. At the post game happy hours, sometimes there'll be friends, talking in the drama in their group and blah, blah, blah. And as you know, zero judgment, but I usually just kind of smile and I'm like, you could call them out, or you really could just let that go. You talk about the
Yeah,
message of
yeah.
forgiveness. And it's like, y'all have known each other a while, right? People are doing the best they can. They might have been trying to offend you, but they also just might have been, life's hard for everybody. You could really do the surprising thing and not dig deeper into the drama and let that go. And I know that's not quite a quote sermon, and I don't ever do it with any kind of like, there's no arm twisting, there's no this, but it's fun just when you're saying a different kind of witness. It's fun to just suggest what in my mind is a very Jesus fueled alternative, but it's like, yep, everything in our so much in our quote queer culture would say you need to go confront them, blah, 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 and tell them,
Yes,
and you're
yes.
totally within your right, and you could, and we'll still be here, we'll love you regardless. But there is one other way that you don't have to live into that cycle. And I mean, and then to your point, ironically, the outcome might be you might actually have more friends if you do this Jesus thing. Like, people want to be around kind of the nice, life-giving folks, like
Yeah.
just give it a shot. You don't have to make any kind of commitment. You're not signing on a dotted line, you're not joining a church, but try out just like forgiveness and kindness for 3 weeks and come back and tell me if you don't have better relationships, and we'll talk about it. Like, that is just so fascinating to me.
Tyler, that's so funny. And it just reminds me that because we just started Lent. So today is Thursday, February 19th. Lent started yesterday.
Yeah.
And I can tell you probably, 15 years ago now, I would practice Lent even if I wasn't going to a church necessarily. It was
Mm.
just a practice, kind of almost like a family practice. We would ask each other, what are you giving up for Lent? And I decided to give up drama. And when I said but when I said I decided to give up drama at the time, I was watching The Real Housewives and a lot of reality TV and things like that. And I said, you know what? I'm feeling it in my body. Like, I'm getting all antsy and anxious about these things. What if I just didn't watch that and didn't get caught up in their drama and gave up drama for 6 weeks? Oh, Tyler, I never went back. I never have gone back to reality TV. And it was freeing. And it was like, whoa, what if I don't watch other people fight about things that don't matter in my life for 2 hours a
Yes.
day?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's so good. And I love RuPaul as much as the next person, the Drag Race show or other stuff.
Yes.
But there are times, and then you're watching, and then I think I'm a comedian afterwards, and I'm pretty quick-witted, so I get a good one-liner, but then you got to loop back to that front and be like, man, I was just going for a punchline. I don't really mean, I'm sorry. Like, that's just to your point, the inputs that
Yes.
come in and then the outputs. It's like, there's nothing wrong with Drag Race, nothing wrong with this, but my goodness, what can be subconsciously then internalized
Mm-hmm.
is really those things where it's like, oh, this is fun, this is how to relate, and sometimes it is, and I love a good joke, but
Yeah.
you're at the underneath it all, your friends gotta know you really care about them, and that's what'll make a relationship meaningful, is that shared care, not that you're all just the funniest, kikiers, and you can get all the one liners on each other, and
Yeah.
helping create that both in my own life, remembering that and not just getting caught up in my own punchlines, but also sharing that with some others where it's like, I get it, and we joke, and I've got certain friends that are easier to snipe, we have all the fun, but like, that foundation has to be like, hey, I'm in it with you for the long haul, love you, call about anything, need
Yes.
anything, like, we are connected. Like, that will build meaning and purpose and love and belonging and all that lovely stuff in your life, but yeah, people forget that.
They do. Well, Tyler, before we wrap up, I do want to make sure that we mention the nonprofit that you're the executive director of. Community Happens Here. Can you tell our listeners, what does that mean? I mean, it sounds amazing. Community happens here. But what's going on there?
Yeah, it's literally saying community happens here between people when they get together across any kind of difference. So it's right in the middle of a neighborhood that's very racially diverse, very socioeconomically diverse. It started by one of my favorite Cincinnati activists, Ruth Ann Wolf, who just realized Cincinnati, I mean, many cities would have this, but Cincinnati has a very segregated school system still.
Mm-hmm.
And so as
Yes.
she was navigating schools with her daughter, she's like, we just need a place where it's around high school in Cincinnati that they start stratifying or sorting people out by, usually income, which codes to race, which codes with this. She's like, we got to do something. So she made the space. We have a space. Every Saturday, people can gather just with neighbors, free coffee, tea, hot chocolate, lemonade. There's always an activity that's led by teens. So they're becoming early leaders in their
Oh,
community.
that's
And then
great.
we are the designated meeting space for so many groups in the city as well. But it really is, it's an organization that's responding to the great epidemic of our time, the loneliness epidemic, and
Mm-hmm.
saying people need to remember that human connection matters, that people being in the same physical space with each other matters, that it has impact on physical health, mental health, neighborhood health, all the things. And it's trying to do the best we can in our little neighborhood to say, can we just create spaces and programs and pathways where that can happen?
Oh, that's beautiful. It's IRL. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And it's as convicting for me as anyone else is like, okay, we're putting our phones away while we're here. And it's like, I'm sometimes the most tempted to pull it back out. But tell me, talk about other miracles I get to see every week. Where do you see groups of teenagers alongside adults with no phone out, talking, just sipping some hot chocolate, maybe making some art, maybe building some Legos, maybe, but we've tried to really invest in what are tactile, physical things you can do and chat. And it is amazing what's happened as a result. It's been really beautiful.
That's beautiful. I mean, that just reminds me of spending afternoons with my son building Legos. That was one
Yeah.
of the things that we would do together, or play Lego Harry Potter on the PS4. And that was
Yeah,
a big thing for us. But it was that tactile sitting next to each other, touching something, but being able to have conversation and build over that and just talk about random things. But also, those conversations are the building blocks for the really great relationship we have now.
exactly. Well, and I chuckle. People think and maybe it's wearing these glasses and I look a little nerdy, but people think I'm going to be so good at chess. I am awful. But the
Okay.
kids of the neighborhood, I don't know if Queen's Gambit did it. I was like, I didn't know chess was a thing still. It's
Yes.
2026, y'all. But we are always swimming in chessboards too, but it's kind of like that. They're like, we want to play Mr. Tyler. It's like, honestly, I'm such a pushover. Like I try to act up, but it's like, I don't know. I know enough to know how the pieces move, but I stink at chess. But like that's the kind of stuff. It doesn't matter because the point
Right.
is chatting. I can sit down and be humiliated by a seventh grader at chess. I have all the resources in my heart I need to do that. But it's like, but we get to chat for 30 minutes, like that's so much of the beauty. And once folks can get to that, like letting the activity in whatever we're doing. I noticed it when you were talking about your son. Let the activity to go. Sometimes adults are
Mhm.
like, I love Legos, I don't. Well, sure, the activity kind of matters. I don't love chess, I love drawing, but regardless, I get to be around people I would not otherwise meet, and we're all on equal footing, and everybody gets the free coffee, so we don't know who has and who doesn't, and everyone talks this, and it's wonderful. So like forget the activity, remember the people is I feel like I'm always saying that on Saturdays when we're here. Yeah.
Oh, and if I gotta tell you, that sounds like pastoring to me, Tyler.
Oh, so it might still be around. Okay,
I think
noted.
you might still be doing it. That's what it seems like. I mean,
Awesome.
real connection with people, getting to know them on their level, being vulnerable, meeting them where they are. Yeah, that you're doing the work. Whatever title you have, you're doing the work out there. So thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ben, are you ready to get into our segments today?
I am. Let's go.
Uh, all right. Well, the first segment is our query of the day. Yes, it's a pun. And our query of the day is inspired by our guest, Tyler. And because he has developed resources for six-word memoirs, our query of the day is, what is your six-word memoir? Ben, you came up with today's query, so I'm guessing you have one prepared for
Oh
us.
no, I don't. I'm writing it as you're talking. I was hoping you were going to give more ideas. Tyler, can you give us a little idea of what a six-word memoir is, other than obviously what that says?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So, kind of famously, infamously, some people are nervous if it's or skeptical if it's true, but they say that Ernest Hemingway once wrote a novel in 6 words. It was for sale, baby shoes never worn. And
Mm.
then so much, right? 6 words, but it's like you get a whole narrative through that. So then when I was working with 6 word memoirs, Larry Smith, who started 6 word memoirs, was like, I'm just going to start collecting these from people broadly, do these storytelling exercises. So Larry's had thousands of 6 word memoirs come in since then from people as famous as Taylor Swift. We have Taylor Swift's 6 word memoir. When I worked there, I knew it from memory. I'm sorry, I've forgotten Taylor Swift's memoir.
Okay.
That's evaporated from the brain. But then, also so many, quote unquote, regular people just like us contributing through the website, these stories. And the premise is always, can you say more with less? And can you find a way to tell, a broad story about your life or a particular season in your life through the discipline and practice of just having to use 6 intentional words.
Mm. That is beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Okay.
Oh, it was so fun. We used to do classroom visits. That was my favorite, to get some students talking about their life in 6 words.
Wow. Tyler, do you have a 6-word memoir that you use?
Oh, I
Or does it
have.
evolve?
Yes. Well, and yeah, Leary would always say this too when he would visit. Lots of people have multiples, like you can go
Hmm.
for the platonic gold version of this is my archetypal best 6 word memoir. And I've had a few different of those. I usually, when I was collaging a lot, I talked about collage scraps tell truths words can't. So collage
Mm.
scraps tell truths words can't. Because collage was really helpful for me in all the journey we just described. So I'd say that's one of the memoirs um, that seems pretty fitting and connects to today's conversation. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I'm just getting into collage. I have one
Yeah.
that I'm working on right now on my art desk. So I really love that one. That is absolutely beautiful. Okay, Ben, now are you ready? What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Becoming more bleeding heart liberal every day.
That's Ben.
That's good. That's perfect. You've nailed it.
Okay.
Thankfully, every day is one word.
That's right. That's right. You really lucked out there. And there's ways, 6 words, we're pretty flexible. When we would do workshops, sometimes a teen would come up like, I don't have it. It's like, just mush those two together.
Okay. I am really trying to get the word unicorn in my 6-word memoir, so you'll have to forgive me. Unicorn and light are the two words that are kind of competing. And I'm coming up with too many words, but for right now, I'll go with her light broke, um, but she shone on. And that's not very well put.
Ooh, no,
Um,
Say
that's
that first.
amazing for a fast one, though. That's quick.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this was an amazing interview and it's an amazing exercise. We encourage everyone. What is your 6-word memoir? This is your opportunity to jump into Instagram, jump into the comments. Let us know your 6-word memoir. We want to hear all about it and learn more about you, our listeners. All right, Ben, it's your it's your turn. We are ready for our moment in queer history. Tell us all about us, Ben, because we've been here, we've been doing stuff.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about a very fascinating woman from history and queer history, specifically someone whose origins started here in Ohio. And her name is Natalie Clifford Barney. Barney was born in Dayton, Ohio, of all places, and lived for a while in Cincinnati as well. She wrote at one point that she knew that she was a lesbian by age 12 and that she was, quote, determined to live openly without hiding anything, end quote. And while that statement is great, authentic, even bold in 2026, she was 12 in 1878. I'm sorry, 1888. So she was born on Halloween in 1876 and died in 1972. She spent most of her life in and around Paris and in different parts of Europe. Um, was known as a well read feminist, lesbian, queer person. Before World War II, held salon style discussion circles and study events in Paris at her home, and then spent most of World War II living in various parts of less occupied and less war torn Europe before returning to Paris after the war. Um, Her works have been published in French and English, but she remains another person who is, though very much openly queer, and someone who, again, wrote about being queer at a time when simply writing about being queer would have been termed indiscreet, if not punishable by time in prison. She was very much out and was well known as a member of the queer community. She also has the what I find to be very interesting background of having met Oscar Wilde, of all people, when she was still a child. and having grown up with him as part of her parents' circle of friends. She would actually later have a relationship with Dolly Wilde, one of his nieces. So just someone that I find very interesting. Again, someone that's not very well known and should be better known, particularly among the queer community.
Very, very cool, Ben. Always finding us some really neat little nuggets that you're just not going to run into in October during Queer History Month or something like that. So thank you. Queer history every day. Love it. Y'all, that brings us to the end of another amazing episode. Thank you so much, Tyler, for joining us today. Is there anything that you would like to promote, social media, websites? Let our audience know where they can find you.
I'd love to promote kindness. No, that's my pageant answer. If
Yes.
people are curious, they can find anything at Tyler Chernesky, so TylerChernesky, tylerchernesky.com. That'll have whatever's going on. But it has been a joy to be here. My goodness, I've had such a blast as well.
Oh, great. And so we're going to have to ask you back one day soon. And
Yeah.
we just know you'll say yes, which is amazing.
I'm right
for
down the
us.
highway. Yeah,
Yes.
we're so
Well, listeners, thank you for coming back and listening once again to Coming Out Christian. We hope that you are enjoying this. We hope that you have liked, you have subscribed, you have told all of your friends, you're following us on Instagram and letting everyone know that you are enjoying this podcast. Give us 5 stars over there in Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those great things. That's some kindness. Promote kindness. Give us 5 stars. There you go. And we will see you next time on the next episode of Coming Out Christian.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope this conversation encouraged you, challenged you, and maybe just helped you feel a little less alone on your journey. If this podcast has been meaningful to you, would you consider supporting the work of Love Boldly? Love Boldly's mission is to create spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity, and your donation helps make conversations like this one possible. You can give at www.loveboldly.net/donate. That's www.loveboldly.net/donate. Want to stay connected with the podcast? Follow us on Instagram at comingoutchristian_podcast for updates, resources, and community. Until next time, remember that you can be queer and Christian and queer.